What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your co-host Donovan Quick, and before we get started in the video, don't forget to hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and as always, we love you. All right, get right into it. Yesterday, the Dolphins held a postseason press conference with Grier and Mike McDaniel. They talked about a lot of different various things, but we're going to focus specifically on Tua for this video. All right, now, one of the things that Grier did that was kind of surprising was he said it is unacceptable that Tua is putting himself in harm's way and not being available for his team. And I found those words to be very strong. And then later, when asked, why the success of the team it didn't happen, and he pointed out that they did fight back from 2-6. But it is hard when your starting quarterback is missing 6.5 games. And dude, I was like, this is the most I've seen the organization criticize Tua publicly. Like, obviously, the criticism that he had before was mainly just like, oh, they were going after Tom Brady and Deshaun Watson, whoever else at the time. But yeah, this is the most he's been publicly criticized by the Dolphins organization. Grier went as far to say, look, he doesn't need to be Superman. He doesn't need to try to make the most out of every play. He didn't specifically say that, but somewhere along those lines. And then he said, you can live to fight another play. Live to fight another play. Don't try to be the hero. Don't try to be Superman. Live to fight another play. And going out there, putting yourself in harm's way, not once, but twice this season. And Tua's acknowledged it throughout the season. He has. He says, I need to be better about protecting myself and being there for my guys. And at one point, he talked about, after the concussion, that he felt he let his team down by not being available for them, by putting himself in harm's way and getting the concussion. And that's starting to sound more like, instead of him criticizing himself, that sounds like it's coming from up top. That sounds like it's coming from Grier, Mike McDaniel, Stephen Ross. That sounds like they're telling him, look, this is unacceptable. And now they're saying it to the press, like, it is unacceptable. And I find that very, very intriguing. Like, to me, that's going to be his main focus this offseason. Like, he's had a main focus every offseason, and every offseason it seems to do well, right? So his first 2 off seasons in the NFL, he's really focusing on trying to get that hip 100% back to, football shape. Then he focused on trying to get his deep ball down and a little bit more accuracy, throwing quicker, and he did. And then he, suffered all those concussions, and then he's like, all right, I'm going to bulk back up, and he got a little chunkier, but he played the full season. But then he felt, okay, I took care of the jiu-jitsu, and his neck is strong enough that he, doesn't instantly bounce his head off the turf when he gets a sack. Like, he knows how to take a sack now and not get severely injured. And then he lost all the weight, focused on his mobility, and he was a lot more mobile. He was. The problem with that, though, is that he dove headfirst into Damar Hamlin, giving himself a concussion, knocking him out for 4.5 games. And then, of course, in the Texans game, he scrambles, Liam Eichenberg holds, and he dives forward while getting a helmet to the hip from Will Campbell, causing a partial tear in his hip and being unavailable for the last 2 games because he medically could not be cleared for those 2 games. And then, God forbid we made the postseason, he probably wouldn't have played that game either. There was doubt in the building about Tua being able to play. Now, Tua himself said there was no ifs, ands, or buts. He was going to play. But once again, if it was up to him, he would have played in the last 2 games. But it wasn't up to him. He was not physically capable of playing in those games without getting a severe injury or being at risk for a severe injury. So, that being said, Grier coming out and publicly criticizing him for it, publicly saying that is unacceptable and that is not the standard here. They're being stern. I have not heard this regime be stern like they were in this press conference, and I really liked it. I know a lot of you, including myself, including Jacob, we're not happy that Chris Grier is returning. We kind of understand it because what kind of good GM is going to come into this, organization where there's no money? You're not going to fire Mike McDaniel because he's tied to Tua. They are a package deal at this point. And so you're not going to be able to pick your coach. You're not going to be able to pick your quarterback. Your money is shit. Like, you're not going to be able to do what good GMs want to do when they're hired somewhere, which is start from scratch. And that's kind of telling. Like, that is a main reason why probably Chris Grier still has a job. So we kind of just have to accept it at this point and hope that he can, learn from his mistakes. He has been in full control since 2019. He has been officially GM since 2016, but I really count it since 2019 because Tannenbaum is Tannenbaum and he sucks. But, Chris Grier, he talked about other things, and I'm going to talk about him in a video for tomorrow morning. Offensive line. So stay tuned for that one. But, dude, I loved the vigor that they had in that press conference. That he's out there openly saying, this is not going to be the standard anymore. We are going to set the standard. And I think a lot of it is pressure from the big man coming from Stephen Ross. Now, Stephen Ross, a lot of us have not liked him since his regime started. A lot of us are criticizing him. Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald. Shout out to y'all for blowing that video up, by the way. And just openly criticizing Stephen Ross for his patience, having too much patience. But I think that this is going to be a very short leash in year 4 for Mike McDaniel, a very short leash in year 7 for Mr. Greer. But in reality, it's year 10, but it's year 7. So it's going to be a really tight leash, I believe. Remember, Joe Philbin, like 3 or 4 games into his 4th year, he got canned. If the standard is not set and the standard is not met, there's going to be changes. Mike McDaniel is officially on the hot seat. Tua officially on the hot seat. Chris Grier officially on the hot seat. Deuces.